On this week's edition of Connecticut Naturalist, a redback salamander thinks I'm a predator and sheds its tail in fear. For the first time on this show, we record a red-eft eating a worm. The erythristic redback salamander makes an appearance. This is another first for the program. A pickerel frog hides in the tall grass of Winsted, Connecticut. This bright yellow fungus makes the forest floor look like an underwater coral reef. A tour through the August garden reveals bumblebees gathering the last pollen before fall arrives. A mysterious moth waits for night to arrive. A mother spider carries a large egg sac on her back. A cicada emerges from its shell, and we see it all from beginning to finish. And we take a tour with wildman Steve Brill through Terry Wild Park, looking for edible plants. All this and more on this week's edition of Connecticut Naturalist. And now, here's your host. Hello, friends. I'm Will Michael, and you're watching the Connecticut Naturalist. This week's show is jam-packed, filled with animal footage from throughout the state and even some footage from out of state. We begin with a look at some activity from Winsted, Connecticut. Let's begin our adventure. Our first sighting in Winsted is a red-backed salamander. You'll notice that this red-backed salamander is without a tail. Sometimes, when a log or rock is turned over, the salamander detaches its tail as a defense mechanism. The tail wiggles back and forth violently, distracting a potential predator. Meanwhile, the salamander crawls away. The red-backed salamander eventually grows another tail. Sometimes you'll find some with short tails. That means that not too long ago, they were escaping either a predator or a human. Here's another redback. This is what they normally look like, with the tail still attached. Redback salamanders are common throughout Connecticut. When you're overturning rocks and logs, you never know what you might find. There's always a surprise. For the first time, we find an erythristic red-backed salamander. I've never seen one before, and found my first specimen in Winsted, Connecticut. The erythristic is a variation of the redback that we just saw. It's the same species, but has a different pigment. It's kind of like finding an albino. This one is fast and hard to film. The redback salamander comes in 3 pigmentations: striped, with a red stripe running down the center of the back; unstriped, which is a solid black color; and finally, erythristic, a cream color with blotches of dark pigment, usually, not always, found on the tail. The erythristic morph tends to live in northwestern Connecticut. It is more cold tolerant than the others. Scientists, including Dr. Michael Clemens, have been studying the different characteristics among the 3 pigment groups. The striped redback tends to do better in lowlands, where the climate is slightly warmer. The unstriped and erythristic are better suited for slightly cooler environments. If you're looking for one, you'll have to explore the forests of northwestern Connecticut. Down here on the forest floor, there's a world of activity: salamanders, worms, fungi, and plants. Most often, you'll just pass them by. But amidst all this brown earth, oh look, here's a lump of coal. Anyway, amidst this earth, numerous mushrooms and fungi can be found, all bright and vibrant. Let's take a look. This yellow fungus looks like a coral from the ocean. The color is as bright as any flower. This purple mushroom has a slimy cap. It glistens in the dappled sunlight shining through the trees. From above, this small orange dot looks like nothing, but from down on the ground, we can see that it's an incredibly colored mushroom. A bright yellow stem blends into an orange cap. It looks as though it's made out of neon. Think about the brown forest floor, with decomposing leaves and debris. Yet, if you look close, the brown earth is packed with beautifully colored salamanders, fungi, insects, all sorts of things. The more you look, the more you see.
This earthworm illustrates that point well. Large earthworm, the ant crawling around. There's a whole community on the forest floor. The worm is a titan of the underground world. Look at the body segments as the worm wiggles back under a log.
I don't know what's going on up here in Winsted, but I'm finding things I've never seen before. Now we have a red-eft eating a worm. This harmless-looking red-eft is actually a monster predator to worms and insects. We find this one with part of an earthworm coming out of its mouth. The worm is probably nearly as long as the eft. He's a slow eater, steadily swallowing more and more of the worm over a long period of time. It looks like he's having trouble finishing his meal. The red-eft is the juvenile stage of the red-spotted newt. As a juvenile, the eft lives a terrestrial life. The bright orange spots and body make the eft attractive, but the bright orange pigment is a warning to other animals of the eft's toxicity. When the eft becomes an adult, it develops a fin-like tail and lives an aquatic life in the water. There's always an exception to the rule when dealing with nature. Along the coastal plain of Connecticut, the spotted newts in certain areas bypass either the aquatic stage or the terrestrial stage. In areas where there's a lot of salt, the newts can find one pool of deep fresh water and live their whole life there. In areas where freshwater pools dry up or become saline due to lowered water tables, the spotted newt lives its whole life on land. Heading out of the forests of Winsted, back to my aunt and uncle's house where I stayed. Even on their property, I'm sure we'll find a lot of wildlife. Back at my relative's house, I had to film my uncle's tractor. It's been sitting outside for a month or two, and already saplings are sprouting out of the seat. There's no stopping the forest from reclaiming its territory. In the tall grass just outside their house, a pickerel frog sits in the sun. Pickerel frogs are common throughout Connecticut. They can be identified by the rows of rectangular spots and two white or yellow lines running along the sides of the back. This Asiatic day beetle landed on my shoulder as I was filming. You'll commonly find these beetles around your outdoor light fixtures at night during the summer. They're not good for your garden and destroy many plants, including basil. We saw a lot of good wildlife in Winsted. We'll be back in the future to investigate more. We're on the lookout for porcupines. While I'm heading back to Danbury, here's a look at some more footage from my garden. If you're wondering who has the green thumb, it's my mother. She takes care of all the plants.
The garden of late August and early September is a grand finale for the summer. In the mornings of September, before the hot sun causes them to close, the morning glory flowers are in bloom. Every morning, new flowers open. The colors are radiant, and insects such as bumblebees gather as much pollen as they can before summer ends. The center of the flower is tubular, leading down to the pistil and stamen. The bees have to squeeze in to get the pollen. It makes for a fantastic shot. The morning glories will continue to bloom until we have our first frost.
Heading through the Old Quarry Nature Center, there's always something new happening here. Let's have a look around.
This moth is relying on remarkable camouflage to pass the day undetected, but it didn't get by us. Notice the patterns on the wings. It looks like the face of a cat. From far away, you can see how most people would pass right under this moth without noticing it. Walking along the trail, I spotted this mother spider with a large egg sac on her back. She carries the egg sac to protect it. Soon the eggs inside will hatch, and out will come hundreds of tiny spiders. With the ability to zoom in with the camera, we can observe the amazing world of the forest's most tiny creatures. This goldenrod is one sure sign of September. Fields of this plant can be seen throughout our state. The yellow flowers seem to glow as the sun shines down on them. Some people have allergies to the pollen from the goldenrod. There's so much of it around, so it could be difficult to avoid. We're finding a lot in the forest today. Walking all along the paths, up and down ridges, it's a beautiful day to be outside. This is some kind of mystery mound of pellets. It appears to be fecal matter, but I've never seen anything like this before. There's a pile of these pellets next to the tree, all deposited in the same exact area. I wonder if these could have been made by an insect of some kind. I'll have to do some research, but my hunch is that a rodent has something to do with it. I'll investigate and let you know what I find. Continuing through the old quarry, can you see the hidden animal in this picture? Look closely. Did you see it? There. It's a young pickerel frog, hunting along the side of the trail. Patches of green moss blanket the forest floor. The moss will stay green through fall and winter. Continuing through the old quarry, we find an exceptionally unique fungus. This specimen is called the stinkhorn. It gets its name because of the foul odor that it emits, in order to attract flies and other insects. The bottom of the stem is covered with a slimy coating. The top of the mushroom contains spores. When insects land on the slime, it sticks to their bodies. The spores then stick to the slime on the insects. When they fly away, they transport spores to new areas of the forest. If you squeeze the mushroom, you can make the spores release. In slow motion, we can better see the spores as they are released. This is an exotic-looking fungus. I tell you, every day brings something new to discover. One morning, as I was coming out of my house to get ready for some filming, put my shoes on, walked down the stairs, I noticed something on my deck. Here in my backyard, a nymph from a cicada is crawling along my deck. It just emerged from underground. It's looking for a place to metamorphosize, so we'll follow it. We'll be able to document the entire process. This year, cicadas had a lot of press in the media. I filmed the entire metamorphosis. It took over an hour for the adult to emerge. I've sped up the footage 1,000 times faster, so you can see it all. Even at 1000x speed, it still takes a few minutes. A slit on the larval shell forms, where the adult will emerge. The insect flexes inside the shell, slowly extracting itself. There, the head is out. This was the 17th year of brood X of the periodical cicadas. Millions and millions hatched in areas like Tennessee and Washington, D.C. But the 17-year periodical cicada doesn't inhabit Connecticut. We have the annual cicadas. They dwell underground for about 4 years. Different generations emerge at staggered intervals, so we have them every summer. The bluish wings are folded and compressed. Now blood is being pumped into the wings and they slowly unfold. Finally, the mature adult is totally free, and it spends the night here. When morning arrives, the adult will fly away and begin searching for a mate. The forest is filled with a variety of plants, some edible, others not edible. If you're wondering which plants you can eat in the wild, here's a man that can tell you. Wildman Steve Brill. I joined him on one of his tours through Terrywile, Connecticut, and he showed us what to eat and what not to.
Hi, this is naturalist wildman Steve Brill. I'm sitting here in my apartment in Mamaroneck, Westchester, with my 3.5-month-old daughter Violet. I'm a naturalist and environmental educator. I take people on field walks and hunt for wild edible plants, herbs, greens, berries, nuts, seeds, roots, mushrooms, things people destroy and discard when they're growing in their backyards and gardens. And these species are very valuable, renewable resources, things that humans have used for food and home remedies for thousands of years. You need to know what they are. You can eat any plant once, but you can't eat them all twice. I lead tours throughout the tri-state area, including Connecticut. We're going to go to some clips of a recent tour in Tarrywile Park in Danbury. That was a lot of fun, and it was Violet's first nature walk. Science of poison plants and how they affect you goes back even before astronomy. That's what people pepper. Has long leaves with little teeth on it pointing toward the tip of the plant. White flowers, it's in the mustard family, so the petals are up in there.
There's some up here, the nut headers. These are American walnut?
Yeah, this is an American species. And smell the leaves, they smell lemony. They come in a green husk. What you do is you go onto the pavement and stomp on them to get them out of the husk.
Oh, how about a nutcracker?
Well, I'm getting to that. Nutcracker is for nutshells, not for husks.
From the ballet.
So first you, yes. Okay, all right.
But you
Here
need
we
a
go.
pick. You
Okay,
need
he
a
wants the Nutcracker ballet.
There he goes. Terrific.
Musically, I take after the mushrooms. I'm a decomposer. The seed, and it tastes like the hot mustard in the packages you get in the Chinese takeout store. I think when
Nobody
people
wanted
do
that.
eat the earthworms, they leave them in oatmeal or something to get the dirt and grit out first. But
Oh,
that's
was that
not.
right?
Yeah, that's not my area.
Well, she took it straight.
Over the course of a career that began in 1982, I've gotten lots of press coverage. The best being when I was arrested by undercover park rangers for eating a dandelion in Central Park. Got me so much publicity that the Parks Department that had planted the undercover agents on my tour dropped the charges and hired me to lead the same tours. Let's take a look at a few of the press clippings. This was the cover article of the Queens Tribune back in 1990 when I left the Parks Department. Next to it is an article about one of the wild parties I used to have in my home when I lived in Queens. This was page 1 of the Chicago Sun-Times. The day after I got arrested for eating, a couple of days after I got arrested for eating the dandelion. You'll see one of the British magazines, magazine inserts in a newspaper.
Next, Steve showed us the inside of his refrigerator, loaded with wild edibles. Bibliophile C. Rodney Dow accompanied me on my interview.
This is going to be a little hard to eat because it's frozen. If you want to taste the spicy chicken, and it's not a chicken, it's a mushroom.
These are loaded with all natural.
Yeah, cheese-free pizzas, ice cream, beans with wild herbs, ingredients too, like cake crumbs for making cake, rice dishes with wild vegetables, soups with wild mushrooms. This is a chicken mushroom, and this is a chicken mushroom burrito casserole. Oyster mushrooms and honey mushrooms. Homemade pasta. You name it, it's in here. This is some of my artwork. These are lifelike sculptures modeled after wild mushrooms, some very delicious gourmet mushrooms and some deadly ones, and some that are as tasteless as some of my jokes. The calligraphy is mine. The mushrooms are made out of sculpey, which is a sculpting material, and painted with acrylic paints. A lot of fun to make. All these mushrooms grow in our area, and
Indigenous to
indigenous to northeastern North America. They're pretty widespread. A lot of them grow in Europe also, although the scientists are still arguing whether some of them are exactly the same species or whether they're subspecies. And mushrooms are not difficult to learn. Once you know the major groups, then identifying the species within those groups can be quite easy. Hope you enjoyed the tour and that this motivates you to take some interest in inspecting and enjoying your own local ecosystems hands-on. This is Wildman Steve Brill. See you in the field.
Well, friends, we've come to the end of this week's episode. If you have an interest in learning about edible plants, Wildman Steve Brill leads tours throughout Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey throughout the spring, summer, and fall. I'm Will Michael, and you've been watching the Connecticut Naturalist. Now stay tuned for one of your favorite animal music videos. Unfortunately, we're out of time, just when I spot a squirrel nest at the top of this tree. Cassie, caterpillar, spinning a cocoon. Hiding in the milkweed leaves, I will protect you. Soon you'll fly on wings that I can't keep. But don't forget the catter boy who watches while you sleep. Cassie, caterpillar, to you my heart is true. Underneath butterfly skin lives a catter girl I knew. Swallowtails won't catch you when you fall. I love you now, I loved you before. You were beautiful. Viceroys and painted men may whisper to you lies. They'll tell you anything because they like your eyes. Cassie, caterpillar, don't you metamorphosize.